Woo! Good for me. French down, huh?
Green. All the way to finish. I gotta get sand it. Well, I have to let that dry before I sand it. But you finish it. You finish it. Yeah.
Hello.
Typically.
Okay.
You sand it and then.
So, where I was in the middle of here with these lights, you can get them at you can get them anywhere. But one of the kinds of lights, I didn't order them. They're a little more expensive, and I ran out of time. But there's a kind that you can that has a built-in timer, so that when you turn them on, they're on for 6 hours and then off for 18. And so you can just turn it on and leave them, and they last quite a long time before you have to change the batteries. I had not made one of these before, but I watched about 1 million YouTubes, which is my typical style of doing it. And I saw it was pretty easy. I have tried things like this before, and I will tell you, the real key is the wood prep. You really have to get the wood square, okay? So I use a joiner. And then I use a square to make sure my joiner is set up. And then after I join it, you join two sides 90 degrees apart. So you do one along the joiner, then you put that one against the fence, and you do the second one. That's got to be a true 90. Then you can take it down to size on your table saw. You can run it through a planer as well, but I tend to just use a table saw. It's a little easier than multiple passes trying to get it down through a planer. These are 2 3/8 in width, I think. So, but anyway, there's 2 things that need to be very particular. One of them has to be that they're really square. Okay, that's one. The second thing is this hole, they have to be dead in the middle. They have to be dead in the middle on all faces, and they have to be the same distance from the bottom in all faces. Okay? And so what I do is I just take my calipers, I measure this across, cut it in half, set my calipers to that, and then run a scribe this way, and turn around and run a scribe that way. I measure up from the bottom. I did these at 44 millimeters. That was a pretty good, but you can get away with like at 40 millimeters. This is the bottom, okay? This would be the top. This is the end that goes in the chuck. This is the end you drill through. And but the idea is you want to really make sure you get a good center line in there. You center punch it so that when you do the 4 holes, they're all concentric. Because if they aren't, the distances between here and here are all different, okay? And so you want to try and make them as close as possible. Now, what I ended up doing with some of these, I got some more blanks at home that I turned, that I made a jig for my drill press. This just turned off? No, okay. So what I did is I have it so it was all set up and lined up, and then I didn't have to do so much measuring, okay? I could just sit there and run the drill press and do it on all 4 sides. Okay, but it's worthwhile spending the time trying to get it square. So then the next part of this is pretty straightforward. I'm going to turn it Let's see. What's that? Yeah, I did a 1 inch. Yes, right. Well, the thing is, you're going to want to get it down so that you have an eighth or 3/30 or eighth or what 5/32, 3/16 inch wall thickness. Okay, so if you make it too big, you're going to wind up. You're going to have very little space in here. So I did a 1 inch hole through the sides, and okay, so yeah, I went in maybe 3/4 of an inch. I didn't go through, like here, it kind of just touched another one. And the reason being is that if I do them all to the center, because I get this one, then I'm going to do the other side, and then here and here. If I do it so it cleans it all the way through, when I pull the Forstner bit back out, it wants to catch a little bit and wobble against one of the other hole sides. So if I do it like this, no, it's just a clean hole in and out, because I'm going to get rid of all of this by drilling it this way. All right? So, there we go. So I'm just using a roughing gouge. Normally, I don't use a spur drive at home. I just use a safety drive. Now, the one thing you want to pay attention to is when you're going over where you've drilled out. You will have a tendency to let the gouge drop into that, and so you'll get a little dish out area. So in the beginning, that's not a problem, but once I get it round, then I want to be very careful about not letting it drop into that cut hole. So I'm taking it very light through here. And I will tend to, if I'm using this part to do most of the hogging, when I get over here, I'm going to use it on this side. So I can, that's more of a, I got more roughing gouge in contact, so I can control that a little bit. Oh, this is that same thing that I bought a pallet of. I call it maple. It's not maple, but it turns kind of like maple. It's not as hard maple, but it's harder than soft maple. So there I've got it round. I'm going to put a tenon on it, mount it in a chuck, and then I'll do some more work on it, trying to get it down a little bit to a thickness. But the real thing is, the next thing I got to do is drill it out. So this is just an old Craftsman. Used to be called a beading tool, but it's just ground so I can cut the dovetail just by going in straight. I got to be careful because this chuck has gotten stuck on this spindle more than once. Okay, I'm going to true it back up a little bit. It's running pretty good as it is. And it's funny, normally I'd like to use a skew on this kind of stuff. But this wood tends to be a little brittle. And sometimes it'll break out a little bit. No, it's cutting all right tonight. But I think that you can control it better with the skew going across these holes. All right? So let me drill. Well, no, let me do one more other thing. So this is a 1 3/8. And this is eventually going to get down to 2 inches outside the beads. And for me, I always make it a habit to hold the chuck. And in general, I'll let it go 20 turns. Now I can see it in there, all right? So what I want it is just above the hole. All right. I want the top of the drill mark. If you look at this, it's probably less than 1/4 of an inch. the top of the drill hole is about there. Okay, and it doesn't matter that you've got the tip from the Forstner bit in here. It just doesn't matter. So you don't have to go in there with a scraper or anything else. Okay. Now, one of the things about that makes it nice is to add the beads. So it's running a little wobbly again, so I'm going to true her up one more time. Jeez. Okay. So that's running truer now. Nope. I brought a million things. No cone center. But normally, I can do it without it, but normally you would use a cone center here just to keep it from doing any vibration. Okay, so now I want to think about putting those beads in. So actually here, I'm going to go in just below the holes. That's going to be one bead. That's going to be another bead. And that's going to be another bead. And you can see the wall is pretty thick. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take in this area and this area, I'm going to take it down so that my thickness, wall thickness, is about 1/8 of an inch or 3/16, somewhere in there. And you can do it a couple different ways. I'm going to start it with a wide parting tool. This is where a cone center would help. Now, the guy who popularized this is Mike Peace. Everybody references him. He references somebody else, but about everybody references Mike. And he does some things that are different. He does some texturing in here. He uses a Sorby texture wheel to give a little orange peel here, and he does it up on the top as well. But we're just going to do a straight one today. But the thing I'm going to try and do is get this diameter and this diameter about the same to start, just to get me in that ballpark. Okay, now let's see where we are. Okay, that's about 5/16, so I need to go down a ways again. I'll do the same down here. Okay, and I'm about 1/4 of an inch, so I'm going to do a little more. Now, I can come in here with a skew and clean that up. It's a little easier to do it with a skew if you can, to try and get this smooth. Obviously in here it's a little small for a skew, unless you use a really small skew. And if you'll notice, the technique that I use, my grip, is like this. And it's called an underhand grip. Hello. And the reason I brought my own rest today is because you can't do it with the comfort rest. It's too big to get your... So this is the other robust design. And so all the set of tool rests I have the full set of robust, but they're all these, so I can get under here and really do what I need to do. And for doing ornament finials, you need to be able to do this because it's so thin. You need to use these fingers to support the wood as you're turning it.
So which model of the robust is that? I mean, he's got a couple of...
I don't know what the name is. I got them when they first came out.
Well, he just came out with another one too. That was the, he's trying to get one that's sort of like Centers, Steve Centers, really straight up and down. I was just wondering if that was...
Yeah, no. This was...
Thin profile? There's a regular profile and there's a thin profile.
Yeah, I guess that's called a comfort rest. That one is. But this was, at the beginning, they only had two. It was a comfort rest or this one. I don't know what it was called. But, the other thing now is I see these are too big for the beads, so I'm going to take them down. I may not take the one up here because that's going to be the roof line. Okay? And again, I want to match up the bead diameters, and I want to match up these diameters. So I'm just using a regular spindle gouge. So remember, when you turn a bead like this, where should your bevel be pointing when you're finishing the bead? This way. And it is not a matter of doing this, it's a matter of doing this. It was the hardest thing we had to teach the kids at Safe Harbor. All right. So I'm going to turn a bead up here, and then we're going to start on the roof. But I'm just going to do a tad bit of sanding because I want to get the fuzz around. Fuzz around these holes. It's still a little thick, but be really careful when you do this. The bottom's not a problem, but I am not pushing. And when you're doing this in here, do it from underneath. So you can spend some more time doing this afterwards, but okay, as you see, I've come all the way around. So this is the bottom, this is the eave of the roof. So I don't matter that this is a little bigger diameter than this, because I'm not really going to make a bead here. I'm going to begin to cut it down. Actually, I'm going to change. That was a detail gouge. I'm going to a regular spindle gouge. The height of this, because this is solid wood, this is where the bulk of the weight is. So when you make a ornament, lightness is really something to consider, so you don't pull the bow down too far. So you don't want to make this a ridiculously high roof line. And the thing about when you're doing spindle work, you're always going from the large diameter to the smaller diameter. But I want to always give myself some room to turn into. So I'm getting this stuff out of here so I can come in from this direction. So what else have you turned that helps you with this cut? A top. right? The bottom of the top is exactly the same cut. And when you're making a cut like that, you always have to keep in mind that the diameter is getting smaller. So maintain the same geometry, this hand has to raise, okay? So as I'm doing, I'm not only coming forward, I'm raising this hand because it becomes a smaller diameter and I need to keep it in alignment. So now I'm going to just make a little bit of a stem at the top, which I will then turn to be a bead. Okay, so while I'm here, I might as well sand just a little bit. Mm-hmm. It's the same. It's the same thing as I was saying with the bead, the whole thing. And a bead truly is you start with the flute open, okay, at the top, center, right here in the center, it's open. This is the movement. And I always told Keith Larrett that it was 3 movements, okay? So as you're turning around, you are turning the, beginning to close the flute. You are beginning to push it away from you, all right? And so that you can come into this bead. So it's like, and you're raising this hand because the diameter is getting smaller. So that's the 3 movements. He always said, no, it's 4, because the other one is you got to be pushing it forward. So you start open, go to close, the hand goes away from you and up. All right, and that's how you form a bead. It is a bead. There's only a bead, a cove, and a flat. That's all there is in wood turning. It's how you put them together that makes all the stuff we can do with it. Or I should say, with spindle turning anyway. Now, the one thing that caught me a little bit for this demo is that I used the 3 the 3 tea lights that I got at Dollar Tree, and I was really happy. They were exactly the right size for this. There's nothing holding these in except for friction. All right. Then I bought the next set. All right. So what most people do with this is they'll get it in there and they'll use a dab or two of hot milk glue. All right. And I mean, if I wanted to take the time, I won't, because I want to do one of the other ones. What I would do is I just get a little blank I have, turn this outside diameter to be this inside diameter, punch out the middle, and just give myself a little ring, and I would glue the ring in, and that'll hold it in place. Okay. So let me finish that off, and I am going to use a skew. Oh, it warn't going nowheres. All right, it's nice and light. So one thing about most right-handers is that they prefer doing a skew to the left. It's easier to control. Yeah. All right. And there we go. Now, mostly at home, I take a real tiny nail. I just clip off the head, put it in my drill. And then, but when I'm at Zoo Lights, I don't want to bring the drill with me, so I use this little Harbor Freight thing, and it's just the right shape that you can push it in. The other thing I like to do is I have some paraffin right at the eyelets, because I'll wipe it on the paraffin. And because one of the things you just hate is to go through all of that and twist off that thing, because then you've got a little piece of steel right where you need it. Okay, I would have taken a little bit more time to sand her up, but you can see it's pretty easy. If you come out and have the blanks drilled well, it goes pretty quick.